Welcome back to the Trinity Stamps channel. Today we're making a slimline slider. My name is Tracy and let's go ahead and get started. So for the slimline, I've got a slimline card base, and then I have a piece that's 3 1/4 by 8 1/4. I actually have 2 of them, so you'll need 2 of those. And this is an interactive slider card. I'm going to be using the Great Outdoors borders, and I'll be using this little hill. And then I'll also be using the Pesky Parameters little gnome. He's going to be the little brother, and I've got a whole story for you. And then I'll be using the Sledding Fun, which is a small stamp set with a die. And let's go ahead and get started with this. We're going to start by creating our background here. And what I have is I'm going to take the first piece of paper and I'm just going to kind of just add a little bit of sky. And what's cool about skies is that they don't have to be perfect, so it goes pretty quickly. So I'll just take my blending buddy with this Clear Skies ink and just sort of randomly blend some blue in. So we've got clouds and we've got sky, because it can still be snowing, right? Typically, if it's snowing, that's going to be all gray, but I just can't do all gray. It's just not in my wheelhouse. So, you know, this is our make-believe. We can make it however we want it. And then I have these two. I have Dr. P.H. Martin's Iridescent Silver, and then I have a Daler-Rowney acrylic ink. And I'm going to use those as splatters. So I just want to make sure that I shake them up really well first. And what I do is I just take the ink and I just grab a little bit in the dropper and drop it down on my work mat. Then I'll take my little fan brush and just dabble it on. So while I'm doing that, let's talk about this. So you notice I have the little gnome, and he's smaller than the other gnomes. And it reminds me of back when I was a kid, and I don't have any siblings. Well, I have a sister, but I didn't grow up with my sister, so I didn't have any siblings, so I never was forced to drag my little brother or little sister along with me if I wanted to go out and have fun. But lots of my friends did, and we were either the draggies or the draggers, and the poor draggy always got the got the brunt of our wrath about having to bring them along. And that's no different with this little gnome. So now I'm sprinkling on the little silver ones, and I will let that dry because it does need to dry, obviously. And I'll go ahead and go offline, clean up my mess, and then move on to the next. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut my hill. And in hindsight, my hill was a little bit steep. You may not want it that steep, but that's what I did. So, and it still works, so I'm not mad. It's just a matter of, and you'll see later, I'll show you why that's important to not have it too steep. I'll go ahead and cut this out off camera, and then I'll just take that same brush, and I'm not going to add any more ink. I'm just going to kind of brush it along the edge, just to kind of give a little bit of shading. And it's actually kind of hard to see on camera, but it's here. It's just a little bit. Mostly it's a pristine hill. We like those. All right, there we go. So now I've got my hill here. Let me get you in camera. All right, we're good with that. Now comes the tricky part, which isn't that tricky, just making sure everything's dry before I move on to the next step. I'm going to lay this hill right down over top and make sure that the top and side, or bottom and side, is nice and even. And I'm going to take my pencil, and you won't see this. This will be covered up, so no worries. I'm going to take my pencil, there it is, and I'm going to draw about, I don't know, 3/8 of an inch in, all along that hill with my pencil. Yes, I've said pencil 3 times now. Shall I say it again? No. Now I'm going to take my little just office punch, and I'm going to punch a hole just to the bottom of that line on the one side and then on the other. Now, what this helps do is it helps you get the kind of size that you need for your mechanism, but also if you're not comfortable with a knife, you would be able to get your scissors in that little hole and cut this with scissors. So I'm perfectly comfortable with the knife. So I'm going to grab my little cutting mat and I'm just going to use my finger blade knife and I'm just going to follow that line best I can. It's going to be under the hill. You're not going to really see it, so it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect, but the hill will need to cover it. And here I'm just kind of fixing that little edge. So I do fine going that way, but when I'm going the other way, boy, do I struggle getting it even. That's the same thing I struggle with fussy cutting, is getting an even white edge. If I'm cutting along the black line, I'm just fine. But it's okay. Again, this is all going to be covered up, so you won't see it. And there we've made our slot for our mechanism. Not bad, right? And see how the hill covers it? Yay! All right, so next we need to start adding our little components to it. And I'll start by, am I going to start by stamping? Or am I going to start by cutting? I don't remember. Silly me. Okay, so we've got our stamps here. And we've got our little gnomes. I'm going to stamp a couple of these little trees that are kind of in the backdrop. And I will decorate it with more trees after I get it all together. So I'm going to freehand stamp these. I've just conditioned it by just kind of rubbing my finger over it. And I'll color those off camera. I'm just going to color them with my Zig markers. So you don't need a bunch of fancy coloring on here. I do color the gnomes, but, you know, overall, just simple coloring works just fine. Okay, I got that one to stamp. Aren't you proud of me? Let's do the other one. I really struggle with hand stamping, y'all. All right, let's try it again. Let's see how I do with the bigger one. Let me grab a bigger acrylic block here. Just put it on here halfway straight. And we'll go ahead and stamp that down. Make sure it's nice and covered with ink. And it's okay that you can, that the bottom is over the slot. That's what I want. I want these to be back behind the hill. So I'm just giving it a good push here, making sure that ink kind of soaks into the paper, and voila. Oh my gosh, I made it. Okay, that's all the hand stamping I'm doing today, friends. Okay, so let's get to work on the other components here. And listen, you don't have to make this interactive. You can make it any way you want to, but I just really felt like doing an interactive card for you. All right, so what I've done is I've basically cut out two of the small gnome from the pesky parameters, but only one beard. And I've cut actually 6 feet because I'm going to use 2 of those feet as hands. Then I've got 2 noses, 2 brims. Here's everything. I'm going to color off camera. And then I'm going to bring in my finger quotes rope. So I flattened that string down a little bit so I don't have a big lump in there, and so I have a better chance of my glue staying together and holding. So I'm just going to glue that little piece of rope down and then put this little gnome together front and back. Now, the reason why I have this front and back, well, because poor little brother or sister is going to be the one, since they get to go, the one that drags the friend and its brother back up the hill. But he doesn't let go of the rope. And so he gets dragged back down the hill and he flops all over the place. So you could see the front or the back. So you want to make sure to cover the back up too for our little flopping gnome. And let me just zoom in here a little so you can kind of see what I'm doing. And I've kind of ombre colored the hats just for fun. And I'm thinking I'm adding the beard, but I realized that I probably need to add the shoes first. Stop, stop, don't stick yet. Wait, okay, good. Yeah. Let's add the shoes on, because you definitely don't want a barefoot gnome in the snow. And now we'll put the beard on. And by the way, in case you were wondering, because I'm describing these as children, gnomes get their beards shortly after birth. So probably at about 6 weeks old, they're already getting their beard. Hey, it's my gnome. I can imagine him any way I want, right? Let's go ahead and put the brim of the hat on. And then I'll flip it over. Well, let's get the nose on. And I accidentally colored one of the nose parts black, but that's an under nose, so it doesn't matter. It's just kind of a piece to help prop up the nose so that it fits on there nicely. And I'm not going to actually pop any parts up on this because, you know, it's going to be flopping around. So now we'll get the back together. And this is why you needed two hats, so we could do the back of the hat. And it doesn't have to be perfect, but, you know, it just helps. It kind of creates the whole finished look. And then we'll go ahead and add the brim. And these are on backwards. I colored them backwards and so on. Then I'll put another little hand in the back just to kind of cover up the white there. I know there's a little white beard sticking out, and that's okay. Let's get that tucked up underneath there. And now he's ready to go with his rope. And you can use any kind of string you wanted, but I really enjoy this black and white baker's twine. So he's ready to go. Our hill's ready to go. Now we need to get our sledding gnomes ready to go. And I'll be stamping those on some alcohol marker friendly paper because I will color them with alcohol markers. And let's see here. Okay, here we go. Using up a little scrap. I like to, you know, conserve my alcohol marker paper as much as possible. I'll be using this ink on 3 to stamp these guys down because it is alcohol marker friendly. And by the way, I'll have everything linked down below in the description box. I just love this new Christmas release with all the gnomes from Trinity Stamps, and even like the small ones are amazing. There's a little tree one. He's so cute. Oh my gosh. I am just a gnome fan. No one loves gnomes like I do. Yep, pun intended. All right, we've got that stamped down. I do let that dry a little bit before I start coloring it. And I'm not going to name the colors here because I'm just kind of grabbing colors. Not trying to get too serious here about my coloring. Just giving them little ombre hats and coloring their little skin, then their beard, and then I put the little stripes on the rope and the front so that it matches up with the striped rope in the back. And I do have my coloring way sped up, like 20 times, friends. I don't color that fast or that neat, but you don't really see my mess, and I clean it up later. So that's what white pens are for. Okay, so they're ready to go, all fixed up. And I've added some white gel pen just to kind of highlight some areas. And then I've cut 2 extras out of some heavy cardstock. So this is 110-pound cardstock because I need to attach rope to these guys too, and I need them to be sturdy. So I'll glue the colored ones down to the first white one. And that's just kind of just to add stability. Because the alcohol marker friendly paper is kind of thin, you know, for something that's going to be messed with a lot. Okay, we'll get that glued down, and now I need to attach the rope to the back of the sled. And maybe little brother has the rope tied around his waist, and that's why it drags him. So I'm kind of deciding where I want my rope and where I want my gnomes to sit when the card is not interactive, because it does need to fit into an envelope. It's still going to be a rather chunky card, so you're going to want to add extra postage or maybe send it in a bubble envelope or hand deliver. So I'm going to trim my rope, and I always cut my rope too long, friends, because I'm just a terrible judge at how much I need. And I absolutely am terrified that I'm not going to cut enough. So I'll turn my little gnome around, and then I'll add some glue. And I did the same. I kind of opened that out a little bit before I glued it down. So it was flatter. There was more surface of the little string stuck to the cardstock. And then I'll glue this piece right over top of it. And I'm being pretty generous with the glue. Okay, and I need to look at that because I want that to be at the back of the sled. So I need to look at where it is exactly. And you can see it takes a little bit for that string to stick. And then I'll go ahead and glue this backer down to it. Then we'll create our mechanism. And this is much like a penny slider, only I'm using a nickel because I want it to be rather heavy so that it'll slide down the hill by itself. In the end, I probably could have made my slot a little bit wider because they don't slide as easily as I wish they did. So I like to use some, slick paper for the bottom piece, and then I'm going to take a nickel and put it on there with a dot, and then I'm going to cut two of each, a heavier cardstock and a lighter cardstock. So one's 85 pounds, one's 110. The 110 stay flat, and we'll just put those down on that nickel. Then we'll take these half pieces and glue them down. Now listen, you can skip the nickel if you want to. You don't need to do a nickel. You can just do this, what I'm doing here, and it'll be fine. I'm just looking for weight. So then you just slide it in the slot and it slides back and forth. And now what we have to do, we have to hide our slot here. So I'm going to add foam tape, making sure that my foam tape isn't blocking any part of my mechanism. Just kind of looking over, and it looks like I need, about an inch clearance. Let's check it, make sure it still moves. Once I'm sure it still moves, I'll go ahead and stick down the foam tape. And I add glue so I can make sure I get it nice and even. And our mechanism still moves, so yay. And you notice I've had to speed this up quite a bit. This was quite the long video because there's a lot involved with it. And then I'm going to add a little piece of foam and just stick my gnomes to the foam. Now I want my little gnome to stick someplace, so I'm going to use some thin clear Velcro dots. You could use a magnet, but I didn't want to use a magnet because they're not safe for children and pets, and this is probably, a card for a child, most likely. So I'll just put my little Velcro dot on there and I'll stick him where I want him. And then you can pull him off, and I later stamp the word pull on it so somebody knows they can do that. So now I need to get get all my apparatus onto a card base, and I'm going to grab some more foam tape. So again, this ends up being quite thick, and also just remembering that I need that clearance on either side of that dot there so that it can slide. And this could have probably used a little bit of a higher foam tape, or again, possibly done without the nickel, because it's barely, the foam tape I'm using is barely thick enough. It still moves, but it would slide a lot easier with a thicker foam tape, or had I doubled it up. So let's just add a little more. And then I'm going to cut a piece down, thinking I can use it there towards the bottom, but in hindsight, I couldn't, it wouldn't fit, because then I wouldn't, my little sled wouldn't go to the top of the hill, because that's the top side, and I want it to go all the way to the top. So we're not going to put that there. We think we're going to put it there, and then we realize that's not going to allow our slider to slide. Oops, my little guy's still connected. Okay, yeah, so we need to leave that alone. We can have foam to about that spot there. So I'll add some down here at the bottom to kind of reinforce. Make sure everything still moves. Yep, we're good. Then I'll add some here to the edge. Now, I know that there are dies that you can do this with, but you can do it by hand as well. And so you can see that little dot, but that's okay. And there's our little brother just flip-flopping around. And then we'll stick him back down. And then I'll go ahead and finish up this card with just some finishing touches here. I'll add some extra trees. I'll stamp push, and I'll put the little sentiment on, which also has a coordinating die. I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit more snow onto the guys because it's snowing, right? So it needs to be snowing on them and on our little hill. And I'm just going to use the silver iridescent one for this part. And again, just use my little brush because I want more control. I don't want to get a bunch on their faces and stuff. But I do want to get snow on them because it's snowing. And they're having so much fun. And little brother's nose is so pink from being dragged around in the snow. I know that's not funny, but listen, in the comments below, let us know, were you ever in a position where you were the little brother or little sister, or the older brother or older sister who had to tag along your sibling when you went out to play with your friends? So here it is finished. I've added some more trees, and I've added the holidays are more fun with friends, and the pull to little guy's beard, and he pulls right off, and this slides up, and then you can slide it back down by hand. It doesn't, like I said, I could have used a higher foam tape, but you know, in my prototype it worked. It just, it's okay. It still works. You can still pull it, and little guy still flops around when you pull it back down. And then he can stick right back onto that Velcro, and everybody's nice and steady on the hill. Well, I hope you like this video, learned something, and don't forget to comment down below. I'm dying to know if you guys were ever those brothers or sisters. Thanks a lot. Take care. Bye-bye.